2 minutes to 6. Last week, the Labour MP Diane Abbott began an article with this claim. Nearly half of Britain's young black people are jobless. We've created an inequality time bomb. In the article, she claimed that young black people in Britain were bearing the brunt of the recession, stating that 47% of them were unemployed. In the wake of that article, there was much debate over whether that claim was strictly true. The Office for National Statistics has pointed out that the percentage drops substantially once you take full-time students out of the calculation, because black youngsters are proportionally much more likely to stay in education after the age of 16 than their white peers. But the ONS did concede that over the last few years, the rate of unemployment for young black people has been broadly double the rate for the UK as a whole, even before the downturn. So what's going on? Do young black Britons face more barriers to employment than other groups, and why? I asked Raphael Mokades, who runs diversity recruitment experts RARE, what he thought was the reason why black youngsters weren't getting jobs.
Last year, about 1 in 8 of all students got 3 A's at A-level, but only about 1 in 50 black students.
So 1 in 8 of all youngsters get 3 A's, but only 1 in 50 black youngsters get 3 A's.
The numbers that we've seen suggest it's something around that. Now, of course, it doesn't mean it's not the case that if you don't get 3 A's, you can't get a job. That would be a very crass thing to say. But I think there are some trends here. It's seen to be a very good thing to stay on post-16, and it is. It's seen to be a very good thing to go to university, and it is. But I think that aspiration needs to be calibrated. Let me give you an example. There are about as many black students at London Metropolitan University as there are in the entire Russell Group. If you look at the top jobs in Britain, look at the cabinet. Only 1 in 50 university students goes to Oxford or Cambridge, but 2/3 of the cabinet went to Oxford or Cambridge. If you look at the FTSE CEOs, people who run the biggest companies in this country, 39% of them went to those 2 universities. If you want to maximise your chances of getting the very best jobs, of becoming Prime Minister or Chief Executive of a top company, the truth is you need to aim really, really high.
So you're saying that even if this particular group of youngsters is in education, sometimes it's not elite enough education. But is it the subjects that they're choosing to do? Is it the advice that they're getting from their schools? Is that causing a problem?
I think there are 2 things here. One is, choice. And 2 is actually what happens when you've got your degree, because it's not just about education. I met a young man who told me he wanted to be a doctor, and I asked him what A-levels he was doing, and he told me he was doing psychology and media studies. And those A-levels, even if you get 2 A stars in them, aren't going to get you onto a medicine course. And no one had told him that. And we produced a report back in 2009 where we looked at the 600-odd black kids who do get 3 A's at A-level. And one of the things that was very striking was the number of people who did have the grades and went to a university, probably somewhere in London. Still a pretty good university, a middle-ranking or even upper-middle-ranking university. But actually, looking back, says, oh gosh, I wish I'd tried for Oxbridge, because now I see all the opportunities that would have given me.
But what about all the other applicants, the white applicants who didn't get to Oxbridge? Why is it that black youngsters seem to be getting jobs in a lower proportion than their white peers who may have the same sort of qualifications?
It's a really good question. The answer is twofold. The answer is partly about what the young people are doing and partly about what the companies are doing.
Are you suggesting there is still some racism around, that people don't know whether they should employ this or that individual?
I think there's a question of cultural fit, and there's a question of feeling comfortable. Now, of course, I'm sure out-and-out racism still exists, but I'm talking about something slightly different, which is that I've just walked into the BBC, all the receptionists are black, everyone else I've met so far has been white. I'm quite sure that no one at the BBC has sat down and done that deliberately, but there will have been a series of steps to get a job sort of behind the reception, not at the reception desk, but elsewhere, through which people will have had to go. And those steps probably will have involved either an application form or knowing somebody, and then some type of interview, and then possibly taking up some references. Now, if you think about each one of those steps and think about it from the perspective of somebody who comes from an out group, you start to see that it can seem a little bit intimidating, a little bit alien, a little bit foreign.
Because that cultural difference, though, could also apply to white youngsters, couldn't it? You know, who speak differently or talk differently, come from a different background.
Absolutely, and I'm quite sure if you found a way to crunch the data on white working class kids, you would see similar trends. Now let's flip it and let's think about it from the point of view of a young job seeker. And the bottom line is this: if you want to play at Wimbledon, you've got to wear white. You've got to play the game. It doesn't mean not being real to yourself. It means selecting the version of yourself which is going to get you hired. And what that means is you have to be better prepared, you have to be better qualified, you have to have done more homework, you have to have built your networks better, and you have to give a better performance in interview than anybody else that they see.
But you're not saying that they shouldn't be true to themselves, because wouldn't it be a great thing if they could go in and be themselves and still get the job?
Of course, you always have to be true to yourself. I'll tell you, actually, all the data we've got, the problem with people going into job interviews is absolutely not that they're being too black or too street or anything like that, because that's what terrifies. That's what people are terrified of doing. They're like, oh, I mustn't do that. What happens actually, and we've got so much data on this, is that people go in and they're all stiff. They're stiff and they don't want to get off the fence and they don't want to give an opinion, and they've got this idea of what being professional is like. And sometimes, what happens is that you end up not showing enough of yourself, and that's about confidence.
Raphael Mokades, do let us know what you think when you email the programme, pm@bbc.co.uk.